Thank you, everybody. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for December 5th to order. And I see that all council members are present and in attendance. So that is fantastic. I will read the land acknowledgement here. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, the Potawatomi peoples, and the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and temporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working the land from time immemorial. Now let's please stand for the national anthem. And just a reminder to anybody in our audience and council members, if you have a cell phone with you, just make sure it is on silent as to not disrupt the meeting. Going to move to a closed meeting report from our closed meeting on December 5th. Mr. Auger, can you please provide that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is to advise that earlier this evening, council met in closed session at 5 p.m. As permitted to do so by section 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act. And at that meeting, council received media and communications training. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council? Seeing none. Adoption of the published agenda. Let's move the adoption of the published agenda for December 5th. Looking for a mover. Councillor McGuire-Blaze, Councillor Allard. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 7th. Looking for a mover of that. Councillor Guerin. Councillor Hammond. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. 7.2, adoption of our inaugural council meeting minutes held on November 21st. Looking for a mover for that. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Mady, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. 7.3, special council meeting minutes for September 19th, that the minutes of the special council meeting held September 19th be adopted as circulated. Looking for a mover of that. Councillor Verbeek. Supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze. Any questions? All in favor? All those opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. So we'll move on to public presentations. We have one delegation tonight, Dale and Natalie Coziana. We will first hear from the delegate, and then we will hear from administration. And then if there's any questions from council members to the delegation or administration, we'll hear those, and we'll get a resolution after. Okay, so Dale and Natalie, if you want to move to the back there and make sure your mic is on and you can address council with your request.
Yeah, we're just here tonight to, we're seeking approval from the town to retain our curb cutout that we had put in for our driveway. We had a driveway installed back in 2019, was it? Yeah, we went, I built a barn. I had a minor variance. I had to come to council for the minor variance and submitted my plans, and the driveway was in the plan, and for us to take it out to the new road coming in, and it was conditions as long as we kept the barn back 30 feet and the driveway was, and we approached Dalabona for permission that it would be okay to do that. And now.
Well, now, somebody came forward to Dalabona with regards to our driveway curb cutout, that it should be filled in, that it wasn't on the plan. So we're asking that we are able to keep this after we thought it was all approved, taken care of.
Like if you read the letter that we sent.
Yeah.
Like,
From the
Yes.
meeting back in 2019.
and Dr. Dalabona said they had no problem with it. They have no problem with it now. There's no issues with it as far as they're concerned. When we talked to them about the curb cutout, they made sure that JJ LaPera was going to do that, and they did that for us. And I mean, there's a lot of money put into this as far as gravel and digging it out and everything else. So, I mean, we just want to make this right with the town, and hopefully we can come keep this, because I have no access otherwise I would have no access to get to my barn.
Your little mic off. Okay, now we'll go to administration. Our Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Gerard, for comment, please.
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the second driveway was not approved as part of a minor variance application to which the garage was built. I won't speak to that. If Director Chadwick would like to speak to it following some of my comments, I'll open up the floor to her. But what I can speak to is the town's development standards manual, which does speak to driveways within the municipal right of way. So section 3.1.7 of the town's development standards manual, which was adopted by council in February of 2022, only permits one driveway per lot on a single dwelling unit. The rationale for the creation of this policy was that there's additional costs to the municipality for infrastructure replacements, for future road work or any future infrastructure replacement, that it would create more conflicts with road traffic and pedestrian traffic. And it also removes green space on private and public property and contributes to additional stormwater runoff into municipal storm sewer. For that reason, when the request to install a second driveway was there, or when the town became aware of the second driveway access on the new subdivision, they were instructed to remove access. When we received comments from the property owners that they were unhappy with that, it was actually administration who directed them to council, as administration doesn't have the authority to waive policy. That's only under council's authority. So I'll if there's questions related to the minor variance application and how the garage was constructed, I would leave it to Director Chadwick.
Chadwick, do you have anything to add about the minor variance?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think what happened, the minor variance application was approved in 2019. The Development Standards Manual was subsequently approved in 2022. There could have been a mix-up in that regard. However, as Director Gerard has indicated, the requirements for driveways should not be approved by the Committee of Adjustment. They do only approve the minor variance in nature related to the garage.
Questions or comments from members of council to the delegates or to administration? Councillor Katie McGuire-Blaze.
So in the Committee of Adjustment paperwork that we got in C on page 35, it would lead me to believe that they were granted the permission to put the driveway there when it says the subject property is considered a corner lot as it is parallel the future roadway that will serve the Great Leaf. Access to the building will be by way of proposed roadway. As such, the building opening will face the exterior lot line. That we knew when we granted the minor variance, did we not know that they were going to put a driveway there?
Councillor McGuire-Blaze, what your questions to Director Chadwick?
Yes, and I forgot to say through you,
Okay.
Chair.
That's okay. Director Chadwick, please.
Thank you once again, Madam Mayor. In reference to the comments that were submitted through infrastructure services pertaining to this minor variance application, I don't have before me. We can certainly provide additional information. However, unless Director Gerard has the comments that were submitted in 2019, we can certainly look through that and provide a report.
Mr. Gerard, do you have anything to add?
We can certainly look up that information and review the comments from the minor variance application and report back to council at a future date.
Thank you. Any other councillors have Councillor Mady and then Councillor Guerin.
To you, Madam Mayor, to Director Gerard. In 2019, would a second driveway been approved before our property standards?
Mayor, no, our 2003 Development Standard Manual, which was the previous manual, also stated only one driveway per lot.
Unless you have. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, it's a common problem. I see it all the time. Most of the time, the residents know of it and they're building in ahead of time, and if they get caught, then they're backtracking. I don't believe that to be the case in your situation. I believe that you relied on the developer maybe a little too much, and you also relied on the committee. That I read it the exact same way as Councilor. Yeah, I read that way too. I don't think if they fill the curb in, I think it's a bigger problem now because it's not going to reduce the traffic concerns that Director Gerard talked about. It's going to probably be worse if they fill it in because they're still going to be accessing that driveway. It is there. And I just think it's going to be a problem. So I sympathize with you for sure. And just a question to administration. I know in my 4 years on council, I don't recall anything like this coming to us. Does anyone know prior to that if we've had something come before council and how we've treated it? I want to be careful we're not setting any precedents as well.
We do get requests like this fairly often from an administrative point of view. How many times it's appeared in front of council, I can't answer that at the moment. However, if you would like us to review the committee meeting minutes along with how many times or what the results were in former council meetings, we can do that as well.
Yeah, so my concern is if we do approve this, even under the situation, that we're going to have many others coming before us who have the same situation. So that's my immediate concern. And just, I've seen the aerial view. Is your lot a corner lot or is it is a corner lot? Okay, thank you. Okay, and it,
The driveway is well off the main road, like it's like 200 and something feet off. There's not a, I don't feel that there's an issue with it where it is. We've kept it, the barn back 30 feet and it's, I really don't see an issue as far as safety goes or anything else like that. It's not going to impede traffic or impede any drainage or anything.
Okay, got it. Any further comments? Counselor Hammond?
Your worship, so what I seen is basically you guys assumed you had permission to do this originally, correct? Yeah, I've read it and that's what I
Letter, like,
assumed too.
so, I mean,
Now it looks like it's been put to Delabana, if I'm correct, Mr. Gerard, for them to fix it.
Okay, sorry, we just have to watch the mics. Director Gerard?
Through the mayor, so that subdivision that is being currently constructed is not owned, accepted, or assumed by the municipality. It's currently under construction. How this happened or how we became aware of it is through inspection by our municipal staff on site. When we discovered the driveway curb cut had been cut out with the intentions of putting a driveway, the contractor building the subdivision was instructed by municipal staff to remove the driveway access. That's how we became aware of it.
Counselor Hammond, you have follow-up?
I would just like to ask Dale if, did he have to contact Belladonna directly for that driveway?
well, when I had that meeting for the variance, they asked me to contact him to make sure it was okay with him, and I did contact him. Like, he was back in 2019 before that, and he had no issues or no problems with it.
Thank you. Counselor Hammond?
Mayor Bondi, may I go back to Mr. Gerard? And now, if so, through town direction, he did the proper thing. Is there a way that if we pass this variance that we can make adjustments? Say through access to accommodate the infrastructure issues and stuff like that? Because I know myself growing up on a corner lot in Harrow, we were charged double the taxes because of the infrastructure around our corner and stuff like that, because we had multiple driveways. This one was basically in there before the subdivision even started. I don't see why it's coming to council now, why it couldn't have been approved after administration basically instructed him that it was okay to do so.
Thank you. Turn your mic off. We'll go to Director Gerard.
Yes, through the mayor, the town never approved the driveway entrance. It was installed during construction. The town acts as the authority in the approval of those designs. The driveway did not exist in the original plans that the town approved. Their request was directly to the contractor, not to the town. So if the property owners were to approach the town and not the contractor, we would have instructed them the same, that only one driveway access per lot would be granted. And that would be consistent with the town's development standards manual.
Okay, so can council has a couple options. We'll go to the Cozianas one more time, and then we'll take a few more questions from council. We have options to do nothing, receive a report, or allow the curb cut. So Mr. and Mrs. Coziana?
So before we got the minor variance and we had talked to the town about putting in a driveway there, they instructed us that they did not own the roadway going into the subdivision that Dalabana did. That's why we got their permission to get the cutout.
Questions from councilors? Counselor? Okay. Okay. All right, let's see what Counselor Rubrik's motion is, and then we can speak to that.
All right, through you, Madam Mayor. My motion is as in our report here, that we receive our delegation and that their request to retain the driveway curb cutout be approved.
The motion, Counselor Guerin, and then we'll go with Counselor McGuire, please.
Through the mayor, my only concern with the motion again is that they relied solely on Dalabona. It is, we're getting into a he said, she said, and I don't like when we're in these predicaments. We are really setting a precedent. We will get calls. I sympathize totally with the delegations, but if we did have in 2022 a new development standards policy, but we've never allowed it. It was in a previous policy that it wasn't allowed anyway. So I would have to disagree with the motion.
Through you, Mayor. I'm wondering if there's a way for us to maybe not make the wording from this committee of adjustments, if we could reword it somehow, because this, to anybody reading it, looks like the town gave permission or knew about this driveway. So possibly, I do see your concern, Councillor Guerin, and I agree with it. But possibly it's in the wording that we used when we approved this minor variance. And I think that's the issue here.
Counselor Maybe?
Madam Mayor, to Director Gerard. If it's gone through the Committee of Adjustment, and you, Director Gerard and Director Chadwick said that you guys don't have the document in front of you to comment on it. Is there anything in there that you can, would be able to comment on to allow us to not set a precedent in case if they were already given permission, perhaps?
Director Gerard?
The Committee of Adjustment, as Director Chadwick had mentioned, does not deal with matters such as driveways in the public right of way. The matter that would have occurred as part of the Committee of Adjustment was to deal with the accessory building alone, only the structure of the garage that was built. Although it may, in that document, may say something along the lines of the driveway, it's the approval of the day that occurs, right? So Committee of Adjustment does not have the authority to dictate where driveways get placed in town property.
Thank you. I think we've kicked this can around a lot, so I'll go to Counselor Guerin for the last comment, then we'll call the question.
Through you, Mayor, thank you very much for that, allowing me to speak to it again. Just to go back to Director Gerard, it's the curb cutout that is the issue. Residents can have a second or a third driveway if they wish and access our roads. Or are we saying that when we say a curb cutout or driveway, that's do the same?
Thank you, Director Gerard.
Through the mayor, the curb cutout exists now, but I believe the intention is to build and construct an entire driveway. I think what had happened was that the driveway had not been constructed to this point because the town essentially put a stop to the driveway. What the town is looking to remove that access from the municipal right of way. They currently have an access off of Queen Street, and they are looking for a second access to their property from the future Graff Street.
The aerial shows there's a driveway there. My concern is one way or the other, you fill the curb in and they're going to be doing the exact same thing that everyone else in town is doing that has this similar situation where they have a curb and they're still accessing it. So we're still dealing with the same problem. And it may be, I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but if the driveway is not going to be made to be removed and they're still going to be able to access it, it's going to be more unsafe. So I'm concerned about that as well.
I said that we were going to call the question. So I think we've talked a lot, and I think I'm not sure what happened at the Committee of Adjustment meeting, but I do believe that, we can reiterate again in this term of council with the Committee of Adjustment members about what is allowed and what is not allowed, and make sure that is clear for applicants coming out of those meetings. That's something we can do better, because it sounds like you're in the middle of this perfect storm of this gap. So with that being said, I'd like to, we're going to look for a mover, which we have, and a seconder. So I'm going to see who is in favor of Councillor Verbeek's motion. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Kosiana, you have approval, and you don't have to hang around it's a learning curve for all of us, right? But a learning curve, ha ha ha. I know. I see that we have no unfinished business, so we will go right to reports from administration. 10.1 Drainage 2022-14, the appointment of a drainage engineer under Section 78 of the Drainage Act to install a crossing on the Campbell Side Road drain. Recommended action that drainage report be received and that council is of the opinion that the activity meets the criteria of Section 78.5 and appoint Rude Engineering Incorporated under 78.5 of the Drainage Act to provide the proposed minor improvements for a crossing for a property on the Campbell Side Road drain. And just looking for a mover on that. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze. And just to be noted before we have discussion, Phil Roberts is here in our audience. If we have any questions, the landowner is here, so we can ask questions if you want. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor McGuire Blaze.
This is just a man bridge, like just for people to cross. And where are they crossing to? Thank you.
So I will pass all these technical questions off to our Director of Infrastructure, Kevin Gerard.
The merit is a pedestrian crossing over the drain to the private property. No, sorry, it is a pedestrian crossing from the municipal right of way over the drain to private property.
Thank you.
Other questions?
No. Oh.
We're having a little bit of a microphone war here, but okay. So any further questions from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that is supported. Move on to 10.2 Drainage 2022-13. Request of result of tender of the South Town Line Drain Replacement and New Bridges. Recommended action that the Drainage Report 2022-13 be received and that council award the request for tender to Shepley Excavating in the amount of $396,904.70. Looking for a mover on that. Councillor Verbeek and a seconder, Councillor Guerin. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 10.3 Fire Services and Rescue regarding our emergency response plan in the town of Essex. I'm trying to read Robert's writing. No. Recommended action that the Fire and Rescue Services report be received and that the following positions identified as the Town of Essex Emergency Control Group. So Looking for a mover? Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze, and is our fire chief is with us. Welcome, Chief. Would you care to share a little bit of information about this for us?
All right. Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, just a quick update on what the emergency plan is. In the town emergency plan, it's legislated through the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, and it's the primary statute in governing emergencies in the province of Ontario. And as you read during one of the recommendations, part of the legislative requirements is that we must provide the names or positions of people within our municipal emergency control group, which is in the before council tonight as part of it. The purpose and aim of an emergency plan is to, during an emergency, facilitate the effective and coordination of human and physical resources, services, and activities necessary to protect and preserve life and property, protect the environment, minimize or mitigate effects of an emergency on residents, quickly and efficiently enable recovery and restoration, and provide mutual aid to our neighboring municipalities. So also, as you get through the back end of the plan, it kind of defines what levels of emergencies, where we set the levels, roles and responsibilities of persons in the plan to operate and plans themselves. That's in a quick synopsis of what the emergency plan has.
Chief Arnell, are there any questions from members of council to our fire chief? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now let's move to bylaw 2022-03, being a bylaw to enact the emergency response plan for the town of Essex, moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Mady. Any questions to this particular bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 10.4, Finance and Business Services 2022-08, regarding inflationary costs, moved by Councillor Mady, supported by Councillor Guerin, that Business Services Report 22-08 be received. But first, we want to have a little bit of a verbal report by our manager, Anne-Marie Eunice. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This report is for informational purposes only, and it's intended to highlight the financial impact the town has experienced because of inflation. This year, the town has felt the pressure of the increases in the Consumer Price Index, as well as the non-residential construction building index. The impact of the increases are being absorbed in the 2022 operating budget, and as senior management is aware of the increases, and they made efforts to minimize the impact to the operating budget. This year, the town approved a new garbage contract, which resulted in an increase of 60% from the last bid in 2015. The town also experienced increases in capital contractor costs because of the increases in labor and material costs, as well as the limited availability of certain materials such as concrete, cement, and steel. One of the largest increases relates to the cost of hot mix asphalt, as the town experienced a year-over-year unit price rise of 91%. A final note to add is that town administration has taken into consideration the high consumer price index while working on the 2023 budget. Director Grusevich or myself would be happy to answer any questions on this report.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Is there any, or are there any questions from members of council to, Councillor Guerin?
You, Mayor, just a comment. Should be noted to the public that the inflationary cost impact is not isolated just to the town of Essex. This is municipalities Canada-wide, worldwide, dealing with similar situation. And it's a great report. It really captures a lot of where the money is going now and what we were expecting and where it's going. So it's a great report.
Members of council? I also agree. It's a great report, and a little birdie told me it was your first report to council. So congratulations. Enjoy. Hey, it's a first for many of us tonight. So thank you. And I think it's going to really help heading into budget in January. So I'd like to thank you as well. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. 10.5 Economic Development 2022-18 Building Report and Development Overview of October 2022. Recommended action that Economic Development Report be received for information. Looking for a mover. Councillor Beek and Councillor Guerin. And I believe Nelson Silvera is here, our Manager of Economic Development, to share some comments to this new council too about what a building report means.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, these will be coming to council monthly, as they have been for the last few years. Just an overview of the building report. The development overview is really meant to put that information into an infographic so it's easily digestible for council. Obviously, council can refer back to the building report for some more detailed information, but we've pulled out really the top highlights as it pertains to that building report and made it a little bit more, a little bit easier to read for council, and also with some real estate stats in there from the local real estate association. So these reports will be coming to council monthly, so you'll get those updates throughout the year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silvera. And it was great to hear our director Chadwick on the radio today talking about how much Essex is booming. So good to see. Any other comments from council members? Questions? Councillor Guerin.
Mayor. Yeah, another good report. Nice to see the increase overall, the 21,285 October to October. Just want to point out the average sale price just to show us where our real estate market is over the last year. So you've seen a decrease in average sale price October 2021 to October 2022 in wards right across, like 140K in 1 and 2 and 215K less in 3 and 4. So just want to point that out, the where our market is right now.
Councillor Guerin, any other comments from council? Okay, all in favor of receiving the report? Opposed? That is carried. 10.6 Economic Development 2022-19 Ribbon Cutting Policy and Groundbreaking Events Policy. Recommended action that the Economic Development Report 2022-19 be received for information and council adopt the town's ribbon cutting and groundbreaking policy. Looking for a mover on that, Councillor Katie McGuire-Blaze and Councillor Allard. All right, and here we are again, Mr. Silvera.
Thank you. Through Your Worship. Yeah, it's just obviously ribbon cutting and groundbreaking events have been taking place for the past couple of years. We've done this with previous council and we'll continue to do so with this council. This policy is just to formalize the process. A couple of points to go over. One, if council decides to adopt this policy, the next steps will be making an online web form accessible starting tomorrow so that businesses can access it, and any new developers or developments that happen in the municipality, they can go on and request a ribbon cutting or groundbreaking for council to attend. The other thing being that as much as we try to schedule these things with new businesses and new developments, the onus is on the developer or the business to come forward to administration and request this type of event with council so that we can give council a heads up for a couple of weeks at least to fit it into your schedules. Other than that, I think the policy is pretty straightforward.
Clara, any questions on this brand new policy from council members? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? I see none, that is carried. Community Services 2022-32 New Year's Eve and New Year's Eve town sponsored events. Recommended action that Community Services report be received and that council supports the town sponsored New Year's Eve and New Year's Day events, which will include free public skating sessions, December 31st at both the Essex Center Sports Complex from 1 till 3 in the Harrow and Colchester Community Center from 6 till 8 in a free public swim session at the Essex Rec Complex on January 1st from 1:30 to 3. Looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Shepley and Councillor Allard. Any questions of council members to this report? Pretty straightforward, pretty exciting. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? I don't think anybody's opposed because there's no hands left. That's carried. Community Services 2022-35. Special events notice, Essex Center BIA Santa Claus Parade, December 10th. Recommended actions that the Community Services Report 2022-35 be received and that council approve closing Fairview Ave west from Hanlon Street to St. James Street between 3 and 6 as a staging area for the parade, and that council approve closing Fairview Avenue west from Hanlon Street to Talbot Street south, Talbot Street north between Gosfield Town Line and County Road 8, Medora Street between Talbot Street north and County Road 8, and finally County Road 8 between Talbot Street north and Medora Street between 6 and 8 for the Essex Center BIA Santa Claus Parade. Looking for a mover for that. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Guerin, any comments or questions from council members? Seeing none, all in favor of the parade? That is unanimous. All right, 10.9, Community Services, Special Event Notice, Harrow Kinsman Santa Claus Parade, December 17th. Recommended action that the Community Services Report be received and that council approve closing Herdman Street, King Street between Victoria Street and Sunset Drive, Victoria Street between King Street, Maple Street, Victoria, McAfee, and McAfee Street and Maple Street and Harrow, and between the Harrow and Colchester South Recreational Complex between 5:30 and 8:30 for the Harrow Kinsman Santa Claus Parade. Need a mover. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Maydee. Any questions from council members? I will just say this to council members. The town puts in a truck for each parade. So our community services department will send out an email. And if you don't want to walk, if you want to go in the truck, you can go in the truck, and the town provides candy for us too. So if you can mark your calendars and we can all go to both parades together, that would be great. Okay, all in favor? And that is unanimous. Community Services 2022-34 Tree Management Bylaw. Recommended action that the Community Services Report 2022-34 be received and that bylaw 2205, being a bylaw to regulate tree management in the town of Essex, be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted December 5th. So that means it will have another reading at a future meeting. Looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Guerin. Our director, Mr. Morris Suit, has stepped out. I'm wondering if you would like to step in, CAO Suite, if there's anything we should add here.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I can do a brief update for council. So Town of Essex, we've had an old bylaw. So we need an update in terms of our tree bylaw, what happens to trees on town property, be it boulevards and parks. So within this bylaw, it lists the native, the species that we can plant. Also, if a tree is removed, the action that will take to replace it, be it through the town or if a resident takes one down, what steps, the cost. All this goes through our arborist we have on site, plus we follow a standard. I believe it's the International Arborist Society. What they'll follow in terms of the, don't remember the proper name, the width of the tree, right? So they know if there's a cost to it as well. So this is definitely needed. I know in there, we're also looking the goal. If one tree is removed at a minimum, we'll replace that tree, if not with 2. So it's a quick update for my knowledge, my previous role with this one. So, but if there are any questions, I can address.
We knew we could count on you. Councillor Guerin and then Councillor Hammond for questions.
Thank you through the mayor to CEO Suite. So there was a policy in place before. This is basically a revised policy.
A very outdated policy. It was more in terms of just boulevards. It didn't touch other areas in terms of parks, or if trees were cut down, how it would be reimbursed. So it just, with more modern information, with more current information, and in more areas within the town.
further through the mayor. So anybody who's perhaps planted a tree in the past and it falls against the policy, how are we handling that? Is it grandfathered in these trees, or it just assumes the new policy takes over?
If it's on town property, would look at it through this policy. But our clerk is looking, one thing we're looking at doing in the future is having an appeals committee, that if there was a question, they could come directly to that appeals committee to address it.
For Darren, Councillor Hammond.
To you, your worship, my question, Mr. Sweet, is regarding to the say trees that become a danger to the public and their immediate removal and stuff like that. Is there still a horticulturist on hand to make that assessment, or is that assessment done through some other town employee?
The Mayor Bondi. So we do have an arborist on staff, which is within the community service department. I see our director has joined us. I'll finalize here. We do have an arborist on site, certified arborist. So they look at that, but depending, there's only one person. So if needed, we can go outside to an external body, but we do go in-house first if we can. To review all the trees, the condition of the tree. He has a whole checklist. He'll make an assessment if it's still needs to be removed, trimmed, or it can stay.
Thank you, Director Morris Sue, for joining us virtually. I know things come up. If you want to add anything, we're still talking about the tree management policy. If you wanted to join in, and you don't have to, just if you want to.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Bondi. I'm not exactly sure where you have gone. Unfortunately, I'm kind of jumping in here in the middle of a situation with the family. So I'm here and available for questions if there are any, or if there's, I don't know what summary CIO Suite gave, but I'm certainly willing to do that if council wishes to do that.
Director, one thing to keep in mind is we are just passing it for the first and second time tonight. So if we do have further questions, we can at the next council meeting as well, or ask them to administration in the meantime. So if there's are there any further questions? Councillor McGuire Blaze?
Madam Mayor, what about ditch trees, like along the ditches, when we clear those out, are those included in this new policy?
We'll go to our Director of Infrastructure for this, Mr. Gerard.
So that depends on the type of ditch that it is. If we're talking about roadside ditches, which collect water just for the road and convey them, then this bylaw would apply to those trees. And in some circumstances, also for the other category, which is municipal drains. Municipal drains are managed separately from the tax base. They're managed through the Drainage Act, and costs of those assessed to property owners at the discretion of our drainage superintendent. But ultimately, this bylaw is there to serve for all of the town of Essex and all trees on public property. So we would utilize this bylaw for all trees on public property, but ditches physically trees physically in the ditch are handled differently depending on where they are.
Okay, any further questions from members of council? Councillor Verbeek?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So tonight, just coming into the meeting, I got another lengthy message from a resident who is on the creek that's being currently cleaned, and she's incredibly upset about trees that are being cut down on the side of the creek. I understand the importance of doing this, but are we taking steps to replant these trees elsewhere? I mean, if there's 20 trees cut down today and tomorrow while they're dredging the creek, are we going to plant some somewhere else?
Verbeek for the question is do we have a CAO suite? Thank you.
Every situation will be a little different in this case. So depending why a tree is moved, especially out of a ditch, we would look at it. The intent surely of this policy is more your parks, your boulevards and all that. And we would rely on an arborist because there's certain type of trees I'm not an arborist, I apologize, I don't know, that he'll recommend to remove and we wouldn't replace anyways. But the intent, whenever a tree is removed, we replace it, but there may be circumstances such as ditch clearing, that may not be the case.
We're only hitting the first and the second reading of this. We can look at it to see if we can encompass this, because some of you that have been here know me out in Ward 2. I've dealt with this issue over and over when our creeks and ditches are getting cleaned and our trees are getting cut down, by the dozens. So maybe we look at implementing something into this before we pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. I like that suggestion as well. Any further comments from council? Okay, so all in favor tonight of the first and second reading? And that was unanimous, so that is carried. Community Services Special Events Resource Team December update. Recommended action that the Community Services Report 2022-37 be received for information. Looking for a mover? Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze. Are there any questions to this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, 10.12 Parks and Facilities 2022.26 Harrow High School Condition Report. Recommended action that the Parks and Facilities report be received for council information and that the remaining funds for the capital project CS 22-0015 entitled Harrow High School Assessment Costs, in the amount of $35,000 be utilized for continued expenses at the former Harrow High School property, which include further assessments. Looking for a mover? Councillor Guerin and Councillor Allard. And let's go to our Director of Community Services, Director Morrisou, here for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Bonnie, and again, my apologies that I'm not on site, but I will take you through everything that I can right now. So I do want to preface this that the slides that I'm going to show you, this is for information only. So later on, we will be coming back with some different options on what different things we could do with the property, some different options that council can consider at that time. So one big thing, as I've touted before time and time again, is we are undergoing our Parks and Facilities Community Services Master Plan. And I think that is going to be a very valuable tool with this project, so we can see a little bit of a needs assessment and what community wants before we make decisions on what we're going to do with this property. So in saying that, I'm going to take you through some of the slides and just go through what our consultant had and what their recommendations were. So next slide, please. So our consultant is Haddad Morgan and Associates. And next slide. So Haddad Morgan and Associates, they've been a consultant for the town for several decades. They've done yearly structural reviews at our arenas, and they've dealt with major consultations for structural issues. We did have one at the arena a couple of years ago, and they were involved in that project as well. So they're a very trusted asset for the town. And they were the project manager for this assessment that took place. Next slide. So the consulting team consisted of a few different contractors. So the first one, as mentioned, was Haddad Morgan and Associates, and they provided the structural report. The architectural report was by Studio G+G. Mechanical and electrical was done by Jelani and Assumption, also known as Jace. And then the thermal imaging was done by CT Soil, which is the Soil and Materials Engineering Incorporated. Next slide. So to go over the estimated costs. So next slide. The scope of the project was to conduct a building review to evaluate what the facility was based on the current usage. So that current usage is acting as a high school facility. And the consultant provided estimates for their areas of specialization. So a couple other notes to just point out within the scope of the project is that this included exterior building areas of the facility, such as the roof, but it didn't include areas like landscaping, driveways, and parking. So that's number one to take into consideration. Number two is that these are based on visual inspections and no physical testing was done. So this means that they weren't necessarily pulling away panels and getting inside, doing core samples or anything like that. It was based on a visual assessment. Next slide. So the first area is the architectural costing. So the areas of focus that were addressed in the architectural areas is roofing, chimney, building envelope, facade, fire separations, doors, windows, ceilings, wall finishes, and flooring. So some of the major components that encompass that scope is the roofing, which you can see the pricing there at $2.65 million. The roofing is in very, very poor condition, according to the consultants. And there were some areas of failure where water was penetrating through the facility. So during this past summer, we did have reallocation of funding to fix some of those roof leaks. So those were just small patches to essentially eliminate the water from penetrating into the facility further, which has held up so far, but it doesn't take away from the need to address the roofing in its entirety. So a couple patch jobs were done. So if we look at all the areas of focus there, roofing, chimney, and brick, we're looking at $2.75 million. Next slide. In terms of structural, you can see several areas of focus based on the structural report that came in. So we're looking at miscellaneous roofing, masonry walls, monorail certification, stair replacement in room 131, repairs in B103, and cracking in 131, a review for that. So the cost for that comes in at $185,000. So you can see that a lot of these are mostly minor in nature, and the building overall is rated in fair to good condition. So again, like I mentioned before, one of the concerns in the structural side of things was the water penetration that's happening in the facility. So we did have the contractors, as I mentioned, stop that water from its immediate penetration, and the patch jobs were done this past summer. So we are continuing to monitor that if there's more areas that need to be done with those patchworks. Next slide. In terms of mechanical, we've got the mechanical costs, which include equipment systems. So included in that is heating system, air conditioning, duct system, ventilation, exhaust fans, heaters, makeup air units, booster coils, and pneumatic controls. So if we were looking at replacing all of that area, we're looking at $2.2 million. And the plumbing systems are said to be predominantly original to the building, which we're looking at $1.4 million for replacement. Totaling for both of the mechanical components, $3.6 million. Next slide. In terms of electrical, the areas that are addressed with the electrical is the switchboard, motor control services, disconnect switches, panel boards and breakers, interior lighting, emergency lighting, fire systems, and intercom and telecommunications. So through the evaluation, they came up with $2.1 million for all the electrical systems, bringing those up to code and replacing as needed. So in summary, to next slide as well. So in summary, we're looking at the cost of all of these areas to be $8.635 million, which again, like I mentioned before, is bringing the facility back to its current use, which is as a high school. Now, within the report, they did have some considerations that it was looking at the facility to essentially become a community center or some sort of hub of. And with that is also coming in that they took those considerations in pricing and gave another price if we were to change the use. So again, the use is the high school. If we change that use to a community center, there's additional things that have to be done to bring it up to the current standards, because it would be a large overhaul renovation project, over 50% of the footprint. So with that being said, we'd have to look at updated building code standards. We'd be looking at accessibility standards, and asbestos removal may be required depending on what areas of work that we do things. Next slide. So with that being said, I'm open to any questions from council, should there be any.
That presentation, I wish it was a little better news, I'll be honest. We have Councillor Guerin and then Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you through the mayor. Yeah, terrible news. Suppose I'm surprised and not surprised. 8.5 million to $10 million plus and only going up. I guess not surprised because we had the report earlier on inflationary cost report. I guess when we walked through as council last term, it's deceiving. You went through there and think, you know, maybe a little bit of money into it, but I'm flabbergasted at the amount of money. I got some questions for administration. Hopefully you can help us out. Thermal use imaging is not environmental assessment. So as far as contamination, maybe in and around the school, we don't know that as of yet, right?
We'll go to our Director Morris out.
Through you, Mayor Body, no, the thermal imaging was essentially to see what the building envelope was like. So it was also basically to see where your air leakages and things like that are. One of the major factors that really helps with the thermal imaging is the roofing, so they can see where the deterioration is happening and where all the heat loss is going through. So when they're doing the roofing evaluation, they're able to see and pinpoint which areas are deteriorating heavily. So it does not have anything to do with the external environmental considerations.
Councillor Guerin, you have follow-up?
Mayor, yeah, two more questions. I guess this one would be to Director of Corporate Services. What is the current taxes we pay for the building property as it is right now?
The Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Drusevich.
Through the chair, this property is classified as town-owned, so it is exempt from property tax.
And then further that, there was the consultant had some concerns with respect to possibly public safety concerns. Are we addressing any of the concerns they had in the report right now? And how are we going to address some of the ones that may come up? I'm a little concerned about the shape of the roof, debris, that sort of stuff. It's in an area where it's a playground area. So I'm just wondering what we're going to do about that, any of those concerns for public safety.
We'll go back to our Director of Community Services, Mr. Morrissoot.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So there are some of the concerns that were able to be addressed, such as the landscaping out front. So there was a big hole in front of the property. So we made sure that that was filled in, so it's not an issue. Some of the windows were cracked and broken, so we made sure to cover those things up. But realistically, without having some heavy workload being done and some big finances, such as the roofing, we aren't in a place to do that right now without knowing what direction we're going with the facility. So one of those things is we're making sure that our staff aren't necessarily going on the roof and doing some of those activities. But you are right, there are some areas of concern that will need to be addressed depending on what council's direction is.
Councillor Guerin. Okay, Deputy Mayor Shepley, and we'll go to Councillor Verby.
Through you, Mayor. The depth of the asbestos in the mold, that's just a cursory, like we don't really know what that is in that report. It could be much worse than what we're thinking.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, to our Director of Community Services.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So we do have a specific substance report for the asbestos. So it really depends heavily on what amount of work we're looking to do at the facility. If there's certain things and areas that we don't renovate, then we may not have to do any sort of asbestos removal. But if we are looking to do basically everything, an overhaul, then we would have to get those things taken into consideration. So we do have that report. It's not necessarily something that we have taken full into consideration at this point without knowing what the direction is with the facility.
So if we left it as it was, we wouldn't have to consider that, but this could be something even where you model a section this year and then later on we change the use. It's a cost that could come up over and over again as we remodel the building.
Through you, Mayor Bondi, yes, we would have to certainly work with our architects because this isn't something that we would just have staffing and administration determining how to go about everything. We would be working with an architect, and those considerations with the asbestos would certainly be part of those reports and what work has to be done along the stages. So as mentioned in the report, the $8.625 million was basically keeping it essentially a facelift. Whereas if we were to do a change of use, we'd be looking at the $10 million range, which takes that asbestos removal into consideration.
Mayor Shepley?
One last question. Was there ever a price put on for the actual demolition of the building to just dispose of the building completely?
Through you, Mayor Bondi, no, not at this point, but it is going to be, once we start presenting some options, that is definitely going to be one of the things that we're going to put in that, so that council has the ability to make an informed decision if that is an option that wants to go forward with.
Mayor, Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So Director Morrison, I'm hearing that if once we go through the Parks and Rec master plan, if the community drives us to a point where we're looking at retaining and repairing this to use as a community facility, is that going to fall within the 8 to 10 million, or from what I'm reading, to use it as a community facility, it looks like it's a significantly higher number. Is that correct? Or would that cover that in the 8 to 10 mil?
To Director Morrisou.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So that is supposed to be an all-encompassing price if we did a change of use, which would include that. Now, keep in mind that $10 million, it's based on visual inspection. It's not, there could be some things that are uncovered once they start digging deeper. Once they start digging deeper into the work. It could also be less if we decide to go with an area of the facility where we're sectioning it off, then that's something that the cost could be less. So that's the projection. Again, we have high inflationary costs, so that could have changed since the time of the report and since their additions. So it should be somewhere in that ballpark though.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from any other councillors? We have Councillor Allard.
Through you, Mayor. Just one question. To repurpose this as a town structure, what would be the price difference of having a new building? Like, just to give people an idea, 10 million sounds like a lot of money to a lot of people.
Councillor Allard, to our director.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So that isn't something that we have right now. It's something that we're going to be working on in the next few months. Once we are able to use the assessment costs with this capital project, we can get some pricing with an architect and see what sort of features we could do, where would be the best place to do that. So the anticipation or potential could be at an extension onto the Harrow Arena. So we can look at where that best location would be and kind of go from there to get some cost estimations. And then that will also, similar to demolition, we have pricing for repurposing, which we would obviously get updated pricing with the contractor, but several different options such as additions and certain features would be part of that report coming out.
I believe, Councillor Mady.
You, Madam Mayor. So in part of the report, they talked about on the roofing that it looked like some of the insulation had failed, but that there was no added cost for insulation. Same with around the windows. Is that part of the extra 10 million? Like, would that be fixed if we changed use, or is that still going to be added on top of the 10 million?
Community Services.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So everything in that is supposed to be all encompassing. So there are a couple areas of the report that do say that additional assessment should be done, such as the windows. The windows are all over the place. There's different kind of windows. So they do say that if we're looking at doing something with the facility, specific window assessment should be done. But that price again is supposed to be all encompassing, including the roof. So there is failed insulation areas. Again, without them pulling back roofing to actually see what's underneath, it's hard for them to give a 100% estimate. That's why it's called an estimate. So as we get further deeper and deeper into the project, depending on what we're looking to do, those are some of the things that we'd have to take into consideration, where we might have to have a contingency portion of the project for those different things that come up as part of the building process, which isn't out of the ordinary when you're doing large construction projects to have an area of contingency.
I believe our CAO has a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Just for council, just to add what Director Morris had said, previous council asked us to come back with this report for the current status as the building is now. So as Director Morris said, mentioned a few times based on council's questions, what administration's intent is, we're going to take you on a tour of the facility. Some may have not been in the facility. We'll take you on a tour of the facility, but we're going to come back with numerous options. Demo the building, demo half of the building, repurpose the entire building, repurpose setting things. Then we can get more costs, because that wasn't the intent here. So I think once we get to that, it'll give you more information so you can have determine what your vision for this property and this facility is. With that being said, in the report that Director Morissette has, there's certain things we still have to cover, be it insurance. We have security monitoring right now. We have those costs covered in our current budget, so there's no additional cost to maintain it as is right now. So we're not looking for council to make a rush decision. We want to make sure we give you the facts. Being your first meeting in new council, that's why it's important. We'll set up a tour in the spring, and it gives us time to get all these options that we can present back to council.
To you, Mayor. Yeah, so those are probably two I should have attached to the tax question. So if you don't have the cost, maybe for our sake, if you can email them to us so that we know what the costs are for insurance on the building and security on an annual basis. And then I guess my last question to Director Morissette would be, the motion is to carry forward 35 and change. Do we have any confidence in that 35 covering all these next step reports that we want to get? Or are we looking to probably have to add more money to that as well?
Councilor Guerin, to our director.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So the assessment that we just had done was in the realm of the $26,000 area. So that was a little bit less than half. So of course we do have ongoing expenses with the facility. So at this point in time, it seems like it will be sufficient to be able to proceed and get some of these costs. If that for some reason isn't the case, then certainly we'll be coming back to council with a request for additional funding, and I'll be working with the finance team to see where that funding model can come from.
Thank you. I think it's a good step to get everybody, aware of what's going on there, and to let the public know the state of the high school. And a tour is a good idea, and I think we've discussed it quite a bit enough for tonight. So going to call the question that we received the report for information. All in favor? And that was unanimous. So that carried. 10.13 Capital Works and Asset Management 2022-12, the Essex Center Streetscape tender results. So recommended action that Capital Works and Asset Management Report 2022-12 be received, and that council approve proceeding with option 3B. That council direct administration to cancel RFT ID 2022-020 for the town of Essex Downtown Essex Streetscape in accordance with the town's procurement bylaw, and that council awards Stantec Consulting Limited additional funds to rescope the Essex Streetscape project in accordance with option 3B in the budget amount of $65,000. So looking for a seconder, or a mover and a seconder, and then we will go to our director. Deputy Mayor Shepley and Councillor Mady, and over to you, Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Gerard.
Through the mayor. So I have prepared a brief presentation for you in addition to the report that was provided in your agenda package. I felt that since, a lot of the counselors at the table now haven't had a lot of exposure to the Essex Streetscape project, that it would be prudent to kind of put something quickly together to kind of discuss those options and what the original history or the past history was on this project. Next slide, please. So firstly, in 2013, there was a design guideline called the Essex Center Streetscape Theming Plan. It was created in 2013 and adopted by council. It included road paving, water main replacement, storm sewer improvements, sidewalk reconstruction, street lighting, landscaping, furnishings to revise and further beautify the Essex Center downtown district. So in essence, what this plan did for the town was kind of set that theme to advise on what the actual detailed design would be for the Essex Center streetscape. It was a very similar practice to how the town managed the Harrow streetscape project as well. And as you can see from the images included in this slide, you can see that the street lights, the furnishings such as the bike racks, garbage cans, some of the blocking and decorative features, those all came directly from that streetscape theme back in 2013. Next slide, please. Excuse me. In addition to the streetscape theme, on November 15th of 2021, council also included a streetscape flex street design. Essentially what this flex street design was, it was going to encapsulate the area from approximately Laird to Talbot Street, from approximately Laird to Victoria. And what you can see from the slides was essentially, imagine if you were going to widen the sidewalks and make everything a more cohesive downtown core that would include parking over a curb, that would make it more easy for the town of Essex to close parking spaces, accommodate street events, and do more type of market events, manage parade crowds a little bit better, things like that, to try and do something unique in the downtown core that it hasn't really been implemented very much in the region, and wanted to be leaders in that aspect and in that design for our downtown core. Next slide, please. So some more background is on January 2nd of 2021, council passed a resolution to include the Victoria Avenue corridor from Talbot Street to South Talbot Street to rehabilitate the road and install a multi-use trail. So the multi-use trail being a significant piece of infrastructure that is lacking in the town, especially with Victoria being an arterial route within Essex Center, and connecting the multi-use trails to the Greenway, South Talbot, walkability on Talbot Street, Hanlon Street pathway. The need for a multi-use trail along Victoria was very much needed. In addition to infrastructure improvements with the road asphalt and some drainage that the town needed to take care of in order to complete that project. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So in the 2022 capital project, I've provided a table here that shows that the total budget for the project was $9.36 million. We had included in the 22 budget to some different a funding model that included asset management lifecycle reserve, some reserves from some growth related reserves, water reserves. The town was also successful in receiving grant funding. Namely, the grants were the CCRF fund from the federal government, the RED grant for rural economic development, and there's also a contribution from the County of Essex for the Connecting Link agreement. We also had some prior year funding for $460,000, which was from 2020 for the detailed design for engineering. We did complete the engineering design and starting in 2020 with the anticipation that construction would follow after. Also included is in the streetscape funding plan was approximately $6.3 million in debt funding to complete the Essex Center streetscape. So what I have included in the presentation is a little note here that since this funding model is fairly fixed, the only way to pick up fluctuations from this project, either up or down, are by increasing or decreasing debt. Next slide, please. So in October, on October 12th, the town did close the tender for the Essex Center streetscape. The lowest that we did receive 3 bidders, Nevin Construction, J&J LaPera, and GIP Paving. The total tender price to the town for that tender was just over $12 million, including non-refundable HST. Next slide, please. So after review of the tenders, we felt it prudent to present council with all of the options that we foresee as feasible options to the town of Essex. There are 4 options, but because one option includes 2, there's technically 5 here for you. So we did break the option 3 into 3A and 3B. But option 1 was essentially to complete the streetscape as tendered, which was the original plan, to complete Talbot Street from Gosfield to Maidstone and Victoria Avenue from Talbot to South Talbot. Option 2, which was to complete the streetscape as tendered. However, we would remove Victoria Avenue. Option 3 is to cancel the tender that closed in October and rescope the project. So that's where the option 3A and 3B come in. So 3A would be to complete the streetscaping only in the core area of Essex of Talbot Street. And option 3B, which would include the core area streetscaping and include Victoria Avenue Road. And then option 4 is to shelf the project and cancel it and cancel the tender. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I did provide a figure here, but as I mentioned, option 1 was to complete the project as tendered and budgeted for, which is Talbot Street from Maidstone to Gosfield, and then also Victoria Avenue. Next slide. When we looked at the financials for this project, it was estimated that the total cost of this project, including any engineering, project management, contingencies, would be approximately $14,258,000, which would require approximately $4.9 million in additional debt. We also included a pros and cons table. So we broke this out in each individual slide for you to see and for the public to see separately, but the complete table is included in your agenda package. The con of this project, we believe, it is the highest risk debt taking requirement, which we'll get into in a little bit. The pros are that the core of Essex is in need of economic development funding and some investment. We would be completing the streetscape theme plan in its entirety, and the public expectations to complete a streetscape would be met. Next slide, please. So the next option would be to complete the Essex Center streetscape alone, not including Victoria Avenue. So completing it in its entirety from Gosfield to Maidstone. Next slide, please. So when we looked at this project and analyzed the tenders submitted to remove Victoria Avenue, including all engineering, project management, and contingencies, we estimate that it would be approximately $12.2 million, which would require an additional debt of approximately $2.8 million. In the pros and cons slide, we note that there is a high level of risk in terms of debt taking requirement. Victoria Avenue is in poor condition and in need of rehabilitation, which is identified in the town's recent scanning of our roads. It would not provide us our connecting link for our trail system as well, for the multi-use trail along Victoria. The pros is that it would still provide economic development investment into the core of Essex. The streetscape plan would technically be completed, as Victoria was not scoped in the original streetscaping theme, and the public expectations for a streetscape would be completed. Next slide, please. So option 3 includes canceling this current tender and having our engineering consultant redesign to decrease the scope of the Essex Center streetscape from approximately Arthur to approximately Cameron. It's not the perfect limits, but in that area. Option 3A being to not include Victoria Avenue in the project. Next slide, please. So when we looked at the figures, which we did review the tender and figured in some additional inflation costs as a result of potentially delaying this by a few months. Construction costs we figure would be approximately $6.7 million. and engineering and project management just over 1 million, which would have a total cost of just over 7.7 million. And it would actually be completed within the town's current approved budget, at approximately 1.6 less than the approved budget. The cons with this option are that there is still a moderate debt taking requirement. There would be additional cost to rescope, which is included in your report. Victoria Avenue is in poor condition and again still in need of rehabilitation. We wouldn't complete that multi-use trail along Victoria. However, the pros are that there would still be some economic development investment into the core of Essex. The streetscaping theme itself would be partially completed. We would be able to create a funding plan for the transitional areas. So the areas not included in core area of Essex, or the areas that we would be removing from the scope of the project. And public expectations would be met that the town is completing a streetscaping as originally intended. Next slide, please. So option 3B, which is the recommended option in your reports, is to cancel the tender, rescope to the Talbot Street along Talbot Street from approximately Arthur to Cameron, while also including Victoria Avenue, roadworks, and multi-use trail. Next slide, please. So this option has a total cost of just under $9.8 million, which would require approximately $425,000 worth of additional debt. When we looked at the pros and cons of this option, there is still a moderate risk of debt taking requirement, and there is an additional cost to rescope, but there's a significant amount of pros in relation to the other options that were presented. We would still receive the economic development investment into the core of Essex. We would achieve a portion of that streetscaping theme. We would be able to create a funding plan for transitional areas, and that public expectation to create a streetscape plan or streetscape would be completed. Next slide, please. So option 4 is the shelf the project option and essentially cut our losses, which would be still a financial impact to the town. So we have presented this to council as well. So although there would be no construction related costs, the town has invested $625,000 to date for the project, which includes design costs, geotechnical costs, all those things in order to prep ourselves for the construction related expenses. The cons of this is that we would have significant investment with nothing to show for it. So those plans would sit on the shelf until we developed a funding plan and council would like to bring the project back to light. We would lose our grant funding of approximately $870,000, which includes the CCRF funding and the RED grant monies. The public expectation would not be met. We have been telling everybody that we're going to be doing a streetscape, and we have intended on doing it since 2013, and we wouldn't be able to achieve that with option 4. There is still a need for economic development investment in the town of Essex. There would be no investment to show for if we shelf that project. And then the other option, which needs to be considered by council for option 4, is that the streetscape theming plan was completed in 2013. The typical practice for any type of plan like that or any type of environmental assessment is that that plan tends to be inaccurate after 10 years. So next year being 2023, if we decide to shelf that project, we may need to revisit that streetscaping theme and receive more public consultation again and make sure that it's still relevant or adjust it to be relevant for the day. The pros, no debts required. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass the floor on to our Director of Corporate Services, who can speak to this this graph a little bit better, and she's our debt expert.
Thank you, Director Gerard. Through the chair. So in consultation with Director Gerard, we wanted to keep the presentation high level. You will note that within the report, each scenario has a very detailed debt analysis with it. And I will speak briefly on that. So what you see on the screen in front of you is the ending long-term debt principal balance by scenario. And as Director Gerard said earlier, The only factor that can be adjusted at this point, upwards or downwards for the budget, is debt. So typically debt is used for new infrastructure. We do have funding options when it comes to replacement of existing infrastructure, but when it comes to new infrastructure, such as a streetscape, debt is the main source. So what you can see here on the screen is each line identifies an option. And obviously, the lower the project cost, the lower the principal levels of debt. So within the report, we do debt evaluations for each. What we have done is we've evaluated them against indicators that are released annually from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So annually, they set out municipal benchmarks on where your debt should be. The main one that was evaluated is the debt servicing costs as a percentage of revenues. And they tell us that 5 to 10% is a healthy range. So you will see within that report, every option, we have given you what those indicators look like. As Director Gerard commented, options 1 and 2 would likely put us in a high risk position when it comes to debt. We would likely exceed the 10% threshold that is given by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So the town administration and council, it is our duty to ensure that healthy debt levels are present. Option 3B was selected given that lost grant monies were minimized and that the debt incurred would keep the town within a moderate risk level. I'd be happy to answer any debt specific questions at this point.
Oh, thank you to both of our directors. Is there anything else, Director Gerard? Okay, I'll open the floor to council members for questions. Councillor Guerin.
Through the mayor, I'll take a stab at it first. My notes are all over the place. I'm just writing away I'm making light of it, but it's a huge problem. We don't have the money. We're up against on the clock, and we have the 90-day timeline on the tenders. We have the 10-year buffer that Director Gerard just spoke to us about. So time's against us, and obviously the money situation. It's a real pickle, and I'm glad I skipped dinner tonight before the meeting. So when this was brought to prior council, this project, legacy project, I just want to clear a couple of things up even for the public. It wasn't because we wanted to beautify Harrow or Essex Center. It was because we needed to do it. It hadn't been done. It was a legacy project. We hadn't done anything with our downtown core in decades. And I've been approached by many residents saying, what do we need it for? The road looks good. What do we need? Parks and park benches and stuff like that, and flowers. But really the beautification part of this project is a minuscule percentage of the overall project. The scope is really roads, sidewalks, water mains, storm sewers. So I always ask myself, is this needed or not needed? So it is needed. Nothing's changed there. We just got to find a way to do this. We spent a lot of money so far investing in how we can get this done and time. So I think it's on us to figure a way out. And I think we will. It's just how much debt do we really want to take on? And can we shuffle around our importances? One option that wasn't discussed, and I want to ask a question before I go on. The grants that we received, as long as we do the projects, is there a timeline on that before we lose it? Or could we put a pause technically on the downtown area, do Victoria, do the connecting link, and come back to the project, say a year from now or 2 years from now even? Can we get through it and still have maintain those grants?
Each grant has different stipulations, but they tend to go by the fiscal year of the upper tier. So the ministries and the Ontario government. So the CCRF fund was actually supposed to be spent by March of 2023. The town was successful in receiving an extension to March of 2024. However, I don't believe that we can extend it any further beyond that timeline.
So just continuing with that, then, so under the circumstances with COVID and the increased, costs that all municipalities are faced with, we've already asked the governments in respect to those grants if we could extend the rest of them or no? Or can we still ask?
Through the mayor. So the red grant, the funding for that was intended for furnishings for the downtown core. So there is the potential that we could purchase those furnishings if there is intent to delay the project any, but that money still needs to be spent within the threshold. However, the CCRF funding, which is the bulk of the funding towards this project, $750,000, that is tied directly to the Essex Center streetscape. So the project in its entirety will need to be by March of 2024.
To you, Mayor Bondi. Okay, so last couple of thoughts on this. I had an opportunity to experience the Flex Road in London on Dundas this weekend. Great job. I mean, we're lucky to get that type of road. I really think it's, the residents are going to really like it. I've seen it partially in use and it looked great. And ours is going to be even better than that. I really, truly believe that. So I'm not in favor of eliminating the Flex Road or that part of it at all. I'm just wondering how, my concern with doing it in parts is we're just putting off the debt, I think. And the other problem we're going to have is the costs are going to go up each year that we don't do it. And we're going to be disrupting our downtown core longer. There's going to be longer disruptions. So we're going to take care of part of it one year, but really you're taking care of part of it. The other part's still affected by it. And then once we do that, we're going to start on that and we're going to affect the other one. So those are the things I think we have to consider. I'm leaning towards maybe this, we're a new term of council. We have some new councilors on here that may not even be familiar. And I'm not even familiar with a lot of our debt we already have, when it's all falling off. I know we're up against time, but I'd probably be more in favor of, obviously I want to hear everybody else, but I'd probably be more in favor of putting a pin in for till our next meeting in 2 weeks. And I don't think we can go any further than that because I believe January sometime the tenders are going to be due. We're going to have to, and get off the pot. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, my question is, do we have time to hear our upcoming budget before we make a final decision on this?
Okay, to Director Jerusevich, I think.
Through the chair, Director Gerard can confirm, but I believe we would not. We have the 90-day period that we need to adhere to for tendering purposes, and our budget walkthrough and deliberations are not before that period.
Would our budget walkthrough still be in that time period?
No. So the 90-day requirement that we have to respond to tenders is expired before the budget walkthrough.
Further comments, questions? Any other comments or questions from council? It is an option that we can table it till our next meeting or defer it. But Councillor Verbeek.
Madam Mayor, just because, there's only a few of us at the table that have been, have had this in front of us for several years and we're familiar with it. I think it's really good that we're having this conversation tonight and we're, actually letting some of the new members, know the questions that they should be asking and getting more information on it. But I would definitely support Councillor Guerin in deferring it. Honestly, my first thought coming in tonight was like, Director Gerard, you kept commenting in the pros that it would satisfy the public's expectations. Well, I think the public also expect us to be mindful of the environment we live in right now. And I'm not saying that like a lot of us are driving our older vehicles for another extra couple of years or deferring a vacation we've been waiting on, or like, I don't want to tax the heck out of some parents that can't put, snacks in their kids' lunches. And I just want to be really mindful how we move forward with this. I get that it's going to, that some of it is, as you say, critical infrastructure that we need to address that's past being addressed. But I also, I know, we all know that this budget coming forward is going to be really hard to manage in a way that we can meet the town's needs and then still get some wants, if there's even money for that, without burdening our taxpayers. Because some of our taxpayers are okay, but many of them are really hurting right now. And so I just hope that we can be really mindful with the decision we make about this. And I certainly support Councillor Guerin's suggestion that we just take another couple of weeks to digest this, because this is a really big decision that's going to have a lot of fallout and affect a lot of people.
Good comments, Councillor Gerard. Or sorry, Director Gerard.
Through the mayor, yeah, I just want to comment on the deferral of the decision. I think it is within the right of council, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the irrevocable period on this tender is 90 days, which would put us to January 12th, which means that there's only one more regularly scheduled council meeting between now and January 12th, which is December 19th. So a decision will need to be made by that next meeting of council on December 19th. If there is an appetite from council to table this to the next meeting on December 19th, I can make myself available, especially to those councillors and deputy mayor that have not seen the design for the Essex Center streetscape. I can make myself available to give that presentation to those new to council. So that is an option. I can make myself available, and I just wanted to let you know that that December 19th date is a pretty hard date here, or we'll be forced to cancel.
And we have Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For Director Gerard, the infrastructure that's underneath Talbot, how bad is it? How bad does it need to be updated? Can we do, I know Councillor Guerin said that was the main reason why we had started doing this. Is that infrastructure sound? Does it need to be done? And what's our time limit on having to fix that before we run into problems?
The underground infrastructure is in good condition. There is a need to replace it if we complete the streetscape project. So essentially, we can put a asset management life cycle timeframe on the streetscape. So let's say the streetscape is good for approximately 25 to 30 years. Since we know it's a legacy project, we probably wouldn't do another streetscape for at least 30 years. That infrastructure will not last 30 years. But if you're asking me what the condition of it is today, and maybe in the next 5 years, I would say that those assets are in good condition, but in need of replacement if we complete the streetscape.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if we go ahead with it now, we're the entire project as it is, we're in debt. If we wait 5 years, which is when we need to update it anyways, we're in probably more debt just because of the way the inflation costs and the rising cost of construction. Is that an accurate statement?
So it's a bit of a complicated answer, so I'll apologize now, but the water main itself is funded by water. So it doesn't impact taxation. It wouldn't necessarily require debt taking, as it would be funded by water reserves as it is proposed in the funding plan now. Any storm sewer or drainage improvements that we would complete are also funded by our storm sewer levy, and maybe a portion of taxation if Director Jerusovic determines it's needed. So the underground infrastructure, when it's needed, doesn't necessarily need to be completed by debt. It's the large, significant one-time expense of the streetscape that requires the debt taking.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, and then Councillor Allard and Councillor Meady.
So is it the amount of debt we're taking on won't affect our budget this year? It'll just be into long-term debt. Is that correct?
Chair. So the original debt that was proposed of the 6.3 million has already been built into the budget. As you can see in the report, it details what the incremental increase would be of each different option. So there could be a potential rate increase, and that is detailed in each section of the report as well. And just to echo my fellow director, Gerard, I'd be happy to meet with any counselor to review debt and what it means from a municipal lens. We do have a good education session planned January 9th, but a little too late. So I'm happy to set up a meeting.
In essence, this project needs to be done at some point, and it's never going to get any cheaper than it is right now. Is what I'm understanding. The cost is just going to grow over each year over year, unless we get it done now. That would be my.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Allard.
Through the mayor, current grants, will they be there for the future? 2 years from now, 3 years from now?
Director of Infrastructure, Kevin Gerard.
So as I previously mentioned, the CCRF and RED grant are one-time grants now. There are, grants that the town receives annually, which are they tend to be allocated to other infrastructure that we complete within the town currently on an annual basis. However, there are grants that are constantly released from the provincial and federal government to apply for, but they don't always apply directly to this type of investment or this type of expenditure. This being an economic development project, we were successful in receiving grants related to economic development. But there aren't very many grants that apply to infrastructure replacement, as the provincial and federal government rely on us through our asset management plan to pay for those on our own.
Okay, we do have, can I go to the director, Councillor Mady first, and then we'll back onto you. Director Drusevich.
To follow up on Director Gerard's comments. So in the past, the Harrow Streetscaping project, there was a one-time revenue stream through our gas tax project. And we actually did use a fairly significant chunk of that to make the debt more of a minimal level. And we should be hearing an announcement shortly, I would say in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that coincides with the December 19th meeting as well. But knowing that we have some pretty strenuous road rehabilitation requirements, administration would propose a favorable mix of what that would look like.
Madam Mayor, I like the idea that we have a chance where we can keep our grants and not get into a high risk assessment or level with our debt. Can you explain to us what happens when we hit a high risk level with our debt?
Drusevich. Through the chair. So there are a variety of factors. The annual repayment limit is a factor that is also within the chart. You'll see option. So that is also issued by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And what happens is if a municipality ever got to a point where they were potentially exceeding that annual repayment limit, they would have to go get further permission from the ministry to obtain any more debt. So we've seen that happen locally. And basically it also means potential tax rate increases to fund the debt payments on an annual basis. So it can be a bit of a rate shock to residents as well. The other important factor to consider is, we need to make sure that we have a buffer, for lack of better words, in the case of unanticipated projects, right? So say there was a natural disaster and we needed to immediately replace a bridge or just for example purposes, we want to make sure that we have sufficient levels. So you will see a debt policy coming out very shortly, but it's very important to look at those tables within the report. They outline both of those indicators, also published publicly as well.
Vucevic. Anything else, Councillor Mady?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, I was just concerned that there is a price to going into the high risk section too. And that it's not like it's going to be expensive today, cheaper later, or it's going to be as cheap as it is today later. There is a cost to doing that. We have to realize that.
So we'll go to Councillor Guerin for our last comment, and then we can make a decision if we're going to vote on one of the options tonight or to defer it to our next council meeting. Councillor Guerin.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. Okay, a couple other things too to keep in consideration. If this was the only long-term debt we were going to bring on, it would be one thing, but we're also going to be considering a few other ones come budget time. We still have a sports field that needs to be up and running soon. We have a fire station 3 that needs to be relocated. We just spoke about Harrow High School earlier, so just some things to keep in mind. And also, when you're talking about tax, we've got impact reassessments coming up next year. So we're going to be talking about what that impact's going to be on our taxpayers, what we're going to do with the mill rate, et cetera. So at this time, if you don't mind, I'd prepare to make a motion that we receive administration's report and defer a decision until our next regularly scheduled meeting on December 19th.
Seconder, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried unanimously, and I'm sorry.
Mayor Bonnie, now it's been passed. I strongly encourage council to set up appointments with Director Gerard and Director Vucevic. I think it's important to have a better understanding of not only the project, but the finances, so you can make a sound decision on December 19th.
A lot to unpack there in a new council, a lot in one night. So we'll move on to 10.14, legal and legislative services committees for 2022 to 2026 term of council. Recommended action that legal and legislative services report be received, that council approve the 2022 to 2026 election of a striking committee, and that council direct the clerk to call a meeting to convene the Town of Essex Striking Committee on Monday, December 12th at 4:30. And that 4 members of council to be specified be appointed to serve the Town of Essex Striking Committee. 5, that the Striking Committee bring its recommendations on the committee appointments to the council's December 19th regular council meeting. That the Communities in Bloom committee be dissolved for the 2022-26 term of council. That council provide to the County of Essex the names to be specified of a nominee for the Essex County Library Board. And if the nominee is a current county councilor, then council also provide a name of a second nominee. That council direct the mayor and deputy mayor to each indicate to the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority Board as their first preference when selecting county council committees that they wish to serve on. That council direct the mayor and the municipal clerk to sign the shareholder declaration attached here to Schedule D of this report. That a councillor to be specified be appointed to serve as the county council alternate during the term, and that the Town of Essex procedure bylaw be amended to provide for the reading of the land acknowledgement at all committee and board meetings, and that council direct administration to return to council in the first quarter of 2023 with further committee report that reviews the feasibility and financial viability, which makes recommendations concerning the following: committee per diems and mileage, travel reimbursement, hybrid meetings, live stream of committee meetings, additional committee training requirements, new committees of council. That was a mouthful. Looking for a mover on that. Councillor McGuire Blaze and Deputy Mayor Shepley. And at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to our Deputy Mayor to chair the meeting.
Mayor Bondi.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to my fellow council colleagues and members of administration and members of the public. As one of the councillors that has a lot of experience here and just all of the training we've had about equality and inclusion, I would like to propose to council that the following, along with myself, Deputy Mayor Shepley, that we have a councillor from wards 1 and 2 and a councillor from wards 3 and 4. My recommendation to council is that we can for once have gender parity. And so I think I would like to recommend that we have Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Mady. And that also serves a couple purposes. It serves that we have a representative who is actually living in each ward on the striking committee. And that is something we haven't had before. So we have somebody living in Ward 1, somebody living in Ward 2, somebody living in Ward 3, and somebody living in Ward 4. So that gives all of our wards are represented, which I think is really important when it comes to picking committees, because we have a mix of rural and urban needs. It also gives us gender parity, like I mentioned, and it also gives us a mix of experience and inexperience, right? I was not on the striking committee last term. Neither was Councillor Mady. Neither was Deputy Mayor Shepley, and this brings in at least one person with some experience to be on the striking committee. I would also like to number 7, that, and this is in consultation today with the CAO and the clerk. I did meet with them today and discuss some of these ideas. That council provide the name of the library board members and that be deferred to the striking committee. So that's something that we don't have to deal with tonight. You know, it gets uncomfortable if you're talking about different people, and that's, I believe, the purpose of the striking committee. The clerk can allude to that further, but you know, talking about people's names in public can sometimes be uncomfortable. In the deadline, we could still meet the December 14th deadline if the striking committee puts forward that name. I would also like to speak on number 10, that the councillor that is appointed to a county council alternate be either Councillor Guerin or Councillor Verbeek, as those are our councillors that have the most experience. And being a new councillor back in 2010, I just think that there's a lot to learn in your term of council, and I think that it would serve this council well if we had our county council alternate have at least one term experience. So those are my recommendations to council. And as mayor with experience, I would like to bring that forward. Thank you.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just a couple procedural points. So we do have a motion on the floor that moved the 12 recommendations as contained in the report. So I think ultimately the first potential order of business. So what Mayor Bondi is suggesting could be handled procedurally in the way of an amendment, a friendly amendment, assuming the mover and seconder on that first motion is in consent. So with those amendments proposed by Mayor Bondi, Councillor McGuire Blaze and Deputy Mayor Shepley, do you consent to those proposed amendments? Yes. Okay. And speaking through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Chair, so the recommendation number 4 is a proposed recommendation that proposes Mayor Bondi, Deputy Mayor Shepley, Ward 2 Councillor Verbeek, and Ward 3 Councillor Mady to be the 4 members appointed to the striking committee that'll have its meeting on December 12th. Procedurally, we would need confirmation from both of Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Mady that they would agree to serve on so committee so that it could be part of the proposed amendment to the original motion on the floor.
Through the chair. 4 has a motion by Mayor Bondi. Would need a seconder before we go to the question of if they want to serve. Is that not correct? Does she not need a seconder first?
So it was for you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, it was originally moved, the entire set of recommendations were in the report were moved as one motion as opposed to each motion. So we do have a mover and seconder on that original motion. Through the Deputy Mayor, what I believe Mayor Bondi is suggesting are friendly amendments in the way of amendments to recommendation number 4, recommendation number 7, and recommendation number 10. So it appears that those would be in the ways of amendments that would need the consent of the original mover and seconder on the main motion.
Through the chair. Am I the only one confused, or maybe? Because the way I'm understanding it is Mayor Bondi wants to pull 3 of them out that are separate motions that we should be having seconders on, discussion on those 3 items. But you're going to Councilor Beek and Councilor Mady to see if they want to sit on something that hasn't even had a seconder on it yet.
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and to Councilor Guerin, that is an approach that could be taken. Those 3 recommendations that are now being amended could be treated as a one-off second motion, but that original motion that moved all 12 recommendations in the report should, in that scenario, be withdrawn. Just continuing, but as it stands right now, the motion is all those 12 recommendations, and the 3 in particular, as I understand it, through the deputy clerk and speaking to Mayor Bondi, are proposed amendments to that original motion that's on the floor.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'd like to speak to the motion as it presented, the amended. But first, I'd like to thank Director Auger and his team. I went through this several times, and I'm really grateful that you were able to lay this all out for us and make it easy. And I'm grateful for the work that went into it. I'm also grateful for Mayor Bondi to have done a lot of the work that was going to be put in front of us, possibly save us from having to hash this all out over the course of the night. I like all the thought that you put into to naming us, and I appreciate that you recognized my experience, and after the last few training sessions, having us drilled home to us the importance of the people that we put on our committees and boards. It looks like you really, put a lot of thought into the placements here, the names that you're putting forward. The community in blooms, I want to circle back. I may have known this at some point. I want to know, I want to be reminded why such a wonderful committee has been removed. The library board, honest to goodness, I went over those applications over and over, and I thought, how are we going to discuss these people? How are we going to discuss these people in open forum? Because when I was on the striking committee with the last term of council, when we were talking about individuals, we went in and out of close so that we could discuss these people. Because I have 2 top choices, and both of them are equally suitable to serve on our library board, which, by the way, I feel is an incredibly important position, who we put there for the next 4 years, considering all the, their past labor disputes and the way things have been going. I've been really blessed. I haven't had to be a frequent library user the last many years because I have all the services at home that I need, but I have a cousin who's been deeply affected and shares with me the cuts to the hours and things and how it affects her and her family and stuff. So I think it's important that the way we fill that. And so I like that you suggested, kind of putting that out there, because I didn't want to talk about these people publicly. As far as your recommendation from the clerk's office, I really appreciate that this is finally happening, that we could pass tonight, this to direct our mayor and deputy mayor for one of them to submit the Essex Windsor Solid Waste board as one of their top requests, because I've been saying for years and years and years, we're the host community for that landfill. There should never be a term that we don't have a voice at that table. So I'm really glad that you put that in there, Mr. Auger, or Director Auger. And I think that was it. Yeah. So I support the motion when we go to a vote.
Robert, your Director
Through
Auger.
you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for the confusion. The one item on the friendly amendments that were accepted by the mover and seconder on the main motion. Recommendation number 10, I believe as stated as an amendment, proposed amendment by Mayor Bondi. I have in my notes here that it states that Councillor Guerin or Verbeek be appointed to serve as county council alternate. I just wanted to confirm that that was as proposed.
Meeting back over to Mayor Bondi so I can talk to us. Through you, Mayor Bondi. So I'm wondering, by doing this though, we're eliminating the opportunity for the other councillors that are sitting before us to have the opportunity to sit on, to at least try to sit on the striking committee if they so choose. So number 4, I do take a little bit issue with that, although I do see your point and your reasoning for it. That one I have a hard time with, and then the library board, no problem, and then and no problem with 10. So basically, number 4 is the only one I have an issue with at this time. Mayor Bondi?
Yeah, I've thought long and hard about it, and there's many municipalities where their mayor handpicks who goes on what committees, like period. There's no striking committee whatsoever. And I really think that this covers all wards. It covers all wards. We have a representative from Ward 3, and we have a representative from Ward 4. We have a representative from Ward 2. We have a representative from Ward 1. Who are we going to swap out that isn't going to create an inequality in a ward? And that's where it's coming from. And it's coming from 12 years of living and breathing experience. So if you can convince me that there's another council rep that has experience that lives in, like, are we going to leave Ward 2 out? Are we going to leave Ward 3 out? Who are you leaving out? And then I think we do need to ask, to Councillor Guerin and to Councillor Verbeek, who's willing to stand for the county council alternate as well.
CAO Suite.
Through Deputy Mayor Shepley, if I can make a recommendation with our director, Auger, that from the conversation, maybe we should go every one of those 3 items, 4, 7, and 10, approach them on an individual basis. Those seem to be the ones having the conversation. If I can make that recommendation.
Seconder on that?
No. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yeah, the recommendation now is to separate recommendation 4, 7, and 10 from the main motion, and we would just need to confirm that that's agreeable by Councillor McGuire Blaze and the Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Guerin.
Chair. Okay, so we can speak to the motions now? All of them are just 4?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So now that recommendation 4, 7, and 10 have been separated, the motion on the floor, as amended through the friendly amendments, would be strictly recommendations 1 to 3, recommendation 5, recommendation 8, recommendation 9, and 11 and 12. That's the motion that's on the floor for council's consideration.
Okay. So discussion on those, or we're going, okay.
Yes. All the question, all in favor? It's carried. Now, item number 4, Councilor or Mayor Bondi.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Mady to give us 1 rep from each ward on our striking committee. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Guerin.
I second it. All right, we're getting there. Okay, so on motion 4, I like the idea of having representation, all the wards. It works out good in this scenario. I take a little bit of offense to the fact that we're putting gender in there. I don't think we have to rely on someone's gender to determine if they're capable of serving on a committee or whatever. So that part of it, I don't really care for. But as far as having representation from each wards, I do like that makeup. And I know it's going to come down to whether Councilor Verbeek or myself or whatever. I'm okay with Councilor Verbeek sitting on that committee. No problem.
Thanks.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, sorry. It's more of a question. Do we not have to ask them if they want to sit on the board? Oh, okay.
Verbeek?
Thanks through you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Guerin, for making the motion or for seconding the mayor's motion. And again, I'll state that I appreciate that you nominated me for the position. And I get that you said it was about my experience on the striking committee and being the only rep for the people of Ward 2. But I, for one, and I'm really glad that you're working for gender parity, because that's something I've been trying to work across in every piece of community board, committee, and group I belong to. So but I do appreciate that. And I accept the nomination, by the way.
And through you, Deputy Mayor, I wanted to say thank you very much for the nomination and for thinking it out. And I agree with every point. I also want to say thank you to Mr. Ogier and his team for laying those out and for us for dutifully mucking them up and making it along this. I believe that the striking committee is a very important committee and I would be honored to serve on it. So thank you very much.
Question, so call the question. All in favor? That's passed. We'll go to number 7. Any questions to that? Director
Through you,
Honor?
Deputy Mayor, just for the assistance of council, if I could just restate the motion. Well, no, we need a motion because that was withdrawn.
Mayor Bondi?
Like jumping right in, eh? That council provide the name to the County of Essex for the nominees for the Essex County Library through the striking committee on December 12th. So that council authorized the striking committee to pass on those names to the county for December 14th.
Mr. Councilor Meady? Questions? Questions? I'll call the question to order. All those in favor? That's carried. Director Auger, should you restate, or I guess we're looking for a motion for number 10. Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Shepley. I would like to nominate both Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin to see if they have appetite to sit as the county council alternate, because they have a term under their belt and both would be equally qualified.
Councillor Allard, and any questions? Councillor Blaze?
Deputy Mayor, how do we have 2? Are we suggesting that we put 2 on or? Oh, they have to decide. Thank you.
Head Councillor or Director Auger?
Deputy Mayor, Councillor McGuire Blaze is correct. We would need to ask the 2 if they wish to accept that nomination. If both wish to accept that nomination, then it's my suggestion that council have a vote.
Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin, do you accept that nomination? They've both accepted that, and I guess we'll now have a nomination or a vote on which one is to sit as the alternate for county council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this will be in the nature of a recorded vote. I will ask each of the council members, provide the names of the two nominees, and please indicate who you wish to sit as the county council alternate in the place of the mayor or the deputy mayor. And as well, in case this is a concern, all council members are entitled to vote on this matter. This is an exemption under the Conflict of Interest Act. So, so even the nominees can have a vote in this matter. So with that said, we have two nominees, Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin. Mayor Bondi, how do you vote?
Councillor Verbeek.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, how do you vote? Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Councillor Verbeek. Last time we did this with ballots, you know.
Councillor Guerin, how do you vote? Sir McGuire Blaze, how do you vote?
Councillor Guerin.
Councillor Mady, how do you vote?
Councillor Verbeek.
Councillor Allard, how do you vote?
Councillor Guerin.
Recorded vote of 5 in favor of Councillor Guerin and 3 in favor of Councillor Verbeek. The motion, or sorry, the vote is and let me review that then.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bondi, as I'll just read who for Councillor Verbeek, we have Councillor Bondi, Councillor Verbeek, Councillor Mady, or sorry, Mayor Bondi, my apologies. Councillor Allard for 4. In favor of Councillor Guerin, we have Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Guerin, Councillor McGuire Blaze, and Councillor Hammond.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, as we've done in the past, and in fact, I believe it's one of the recommendations. So in the report itself, on the premise that it was recommended that for any council appointments tonight, that we follow the same process that's outlined in the, I think it's Schedule A, be in the committee or terms of reference for the striking committee. So in the event of a tie vote, the recommendation is to select the 2 names and draw that from the proverbial hat.
That if that's the way it's going to be done, I think that's ludicrous. So I'll just withdraw my name. It's fine.
You, Deputy Mayor, as the nominee, Guerin has withdrawn from consideration, then the nominee, Councillor Verbeek, is appointed to serve as county council alternate.
And back over to Mayor Bondi.
Thank you, council. That was a good discussion. I think if we could survive that, we could survive the next 4 years. We're good to go now. Okay, reports from our youth members. We have no youth members here, I don't believe, Mr. Auger.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, we do not. And just as a further note, one of the items in the early part of the new year is to look at youth members with possibly recommendations and recruitment for.
Great, I look forward to that. County Council update. Deputy Mayor Shepley, do you have a County Council update tonight?
Mayor Bondi. On December 23rd, Mayor Bondi and I were sworn in with all the other mayors throughout the Essex County. We were a part of history that night. We selected our first female warden of Essex County, and we also elected our deputy warden, Joe Bichetti, and we'll begin county budget deliberations on December 7th. And that's everything.
To receive our deputy mayor's verbal report, Councillor Verbeek, Councillor McGuire Blaze, all in favor? Oh, sorry, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. All right, correspondence. So as we've done in the past, we will receive all the correspondence, and then if there are certain letters that councillors want to take out and discuss or have other action items, we can discuss that. So correspondence to be received, that all the correspondence listed in agenda item 13.1 be received. And looking for a mover on that. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Councillor Mady. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, is there any correspondence that any councillors want to pull out to speak to? Seeing none, we will move on to correspondence to be considered for receive and support. That the Salvation Army Week, that the correspondence from the Salvation Army asking council to consider proclaiming Salvation Army Week in the town of Essex be received or received and supported, and if supported, that councillor proclaim the week of December 18th to December 24th as Salvation Army Week in the town of Essex by adopting the following resolution.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas the Salvation Army is the largest non-governmental service provider in Canada and has been serving men, women, and children across our great nation for over 135 years. And whereas the Salvation Army is distinguished by its compassion and commitment towards those it serves across a broad range of services and programs, including food banks, homeless shelters, thrift stores, mental health counseling, and correctional and justice services, community and family services, and many more. And whereas the Salvation Army celebrates and recognizes the hard work and dedication of the countless volunteers who have and continue to volunteer with the Salvation Army and deliver the many critical services it provides. And whereas the Salvation Army's annual Christmas Kettle campaign is a symbol of hope to people who receive care from the Salvation Army in the town of Essex each year.
Bondi, Mayor of the town of Essex, do hereby proclaim December 18th to 24th, 2022 as the Salvation Army Week in the town of Essex to support the Salvation Army's efforts to give hope to the people in need in our community. Looking for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Allard. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just really pleased with this, and I didn't want to let it slide without bringing some attention to our Salvation Army group here in Essex. They're solid. 25 years ago, I remember calling them for help when a homeless person wandered into one of our meetings down the road. I'm just saying, like, we're really fortunate. We have a strong Salvation Army group here in our town.
We will move on to committee meeting minutes. That the committee minutes listed in agenda item 14, together with any recommendations to council be noted therein, be received, approved, and adopted as circulating. Looking for a mover for the committee minutes. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Mady, any questions to the committee minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Financial 15.1, 2022 operating variance report, third quarter. Looking for a motion that the third quarter departmental operating variance report be received. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Guerin, and here we'll just go to Director Drusevich to explain what this is.
Thank you, through the chair. So as you can see, we've pulled up page 592. Are you able to just zoom in a touch for us, Shelley? Perfect. Yeah. So what you have here is a prior approved council budget variance report. In the previous term of council, they tasked the finance team with presenting regular variance reports. What this report shows is the approved budget. It shows the year-to-date Q3, meaning up to September 30th. It shows the unused budget amount, and then it shows the percentage of budget that has been used. You'll also see a comment section, which is filled in by each director as well as the CAO on why there might be an unusual variance. So again, this is prior approved council decisions. This is for the operating. Capital does have a separate report, which we will go over in a second. Important to note that a lot of the entries that we perform for audit purposes are done dated December 31st for our year end. So you may see some comments there if there's some large skews. But ultimately, this is your option to present any questions to administration on certain variances that you might see through the operating. You'll likely have more questions when it comes to the capital side of things. But this is just a quick overview for you. And the first report that you will see would be Q1 for 2023 after the 23 budget has been approved. So you will have a little bit of a lag, but we didn't want to discontinue bringing this report to council because of its importance. So the next report is page 598. And I don't know if you're able to zoom in a touch on that for us, Shelley, just to the headings. That's perfect.
Drusevich, is this the capital one? Okay, before we go on to that, let's just see if there's any questions to the operating and we can vote on that. Any questions from council to Director Drusevich regarding the operating variance report? And council, you can always email her too if you get sitting on your couch one night and you have some questions. And seeing no questions, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? That is carried. 2022 capital variance report and procurement report moved by. Move this one so we can discuss it. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Councillor Mady, and there you go, Director Drusevich. Back at you.
Thank you, through the chair. If anyone's doing some nighttime reading, as Mayor Bondi suggested, that's great. So the capital report you see here is more likely to spur questions from council. So you'll notice that the 23 budget is similar to this style. We've tried to make them kind of in partnership. So what you can see here is there is some I'm not going to get too in the weeds because we have a lot of finance education sessions coming up, but just a quick overview. Again, 2022 approved projects. And what this does is look at their tendering type. And then if you could just scroll over a bit to the right for me, it shows the actual costs that have been incurred as of September 30th. And then it shows the approved budget. And it also has a column that we added this year for post-budget approval. So as the inflationary report highlighted, we did have to come back to council a number of times to request additional funds. So you will see the resolution noted there. And then again, director and manager comments on where the project is at. So a very useful report for council. If you're looking for where a capital project is at, this is your first stopping point. And then again, the directors, we can always provide more information, but this is available to the public as well. Any questions on this one?
Drusevich? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
So through the chair, this was a request from Mayor Bondi to begin doing a procurement specific report. So on page 606 of the agenda package, you will notice that this doesn't contain any financial information other than the total amount of the tender. And what it details is all of the tender information on that specific project. So we plan on bringing this forward quarterly as well for council's receipt. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from council? All right, all in favor? That was unanimous. New business, no new business was brought to our attention tonight, and I don't believe, Mr. Oj, we have any notices of motion. Okay, reports and announcements from council members. So so I don't skip anybody. I'll start at one end of the room, and Councillor Guerin. Mayor Shepley.
Thanks through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to remind everybody that this Friday night, we're going to be having the McGregor Stroll by Santa event. I shout out to our town staff for lighting it up. It's got lots of new lights, and I want to thank thank Gagno Salvage, the McGregor KFC, Tailwaggers in Bose Auto Everything, and some of our tireless volunteers, Tina McAgee and Ron and Lori Dufour, for helping pull this event together. So come on out from 5:30 till 7:30. It's at the Parquet right next to the post office. There'll be hot dogs, there'll be hot chocolate, there'll be cupcakes, there'll be Santa Claus with a gift for every child, lots of snacks, little craft table. It's an entirely free event. And we hope to have a big crowd. Oh, and lots of Christmas music. My son-in-law is DJing. So I hope to see lots of people out at the McGregor Parquet Friday night.
Allard. Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Through you, Chair, I just want to let everyone know that the Santa's Village, their first annual Santa's Village, is this Saturday in Essex Center. It goes from 3 o'clock until 9 p.m. It's a free event for everybody. There will be vendors, and Santa will be there with a gift for everybody. There will be buskers and music and an ice sculptor. There's crafts for kids. It should be a really, really well-received event, I think, by the town. And so we invite you to come out and enjoy the first annual Santa's Village. Thank you.
I think it's great. I can't wait. Councillor Mady.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just want to say that we approve the parades too, right? So don't forget to come out to the parades. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there.
And not too much for me. I do have Goodfellow tickets on me. So for $10, if anybody wants a Goodfellow ticket for the 50-50 draw, you can send me a message. Bylaws that require sorry. Oh, I do have one announcement. Sorry. We have a significant milestone in our municipality that I'd like to announce. We have Robert and Rose Brown celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. So if you know Robert and Rose, drop by and give them a bottle of wine or some cookies. So congratulations, Robert and Rose. 60 years. That's awesome. Bylaws that require a third and final reading. Bylaw 2202. That bylaw 2202 be a bylaw to conform the proceedings of the November 7th, 2022 regular council meeting of the Corporation of the Town of Essex be read a third and final time today. Looking for a mover there. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Hammond, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That was carried unanimously. Bylaws that require first, second, and third reading. Bylaw 2208, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Essex to authorize the borrowing upon serial debentures in the principal amount of $2.2 million towards the cost of the Harrow streetscape. Moved by Councillor Mady, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Councillor Allard.
Is this the final payment on the streetscape?
Question to Director Drusevich.
Through the chair. So this is just one of the ways that the Harrow Streetscape project was funded. It also had a combination of grant funding and other reserves. I did circulate an email to council earlier this morning or this afternoon. So if you take a look at it, we are still waiting to receive some invoices from vendors, but this debt will cover the costs that were incurred from 2020 and 2021 that the town is just internally funded.
Okay. Any more questions? All right, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Bylaw 19.3, bylaw 2206, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the December 5th regular council meeting to be read a first and a second time. Looking for a mover. Councillor Allard and a seconder, Councillor Hammond. Any questions here? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Just we have a couple of future meetings coming up. The striking committee obviously will be meeting December 12th, and then we have fire awards that night as well. Monday, December 19th, we will have our regular council meeting at 6. I believe we have a closed meeting before that. And then Monday, January 16th, while we're planning into the new year already, we have a regular council meeting that night as well. So that adjourns our business today. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze, any questions? Hope not. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you.